Oh, hello lovelies. Gosh, it's another roasty toasty one today. How are you all? I hope you're well. It's not a hot day, it's just a very humid day. Humidity's just increased because it's drizzling as well. Mizzling, drizzling, whatever you call it. Anyway, never mind. So today I thought I'm gonna just have a quick chat about my budgeting, frugality again, just a bit of a dip back in this sort of, we're slightly over halfway through the year, aren't we? Yeah, I've had a couple of shocking bills which make me reassess. I'm gonna go into that in a second, but just to say really quickly, in the last few weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks or so, and it's absolutely fine, I've had a few people unsubscribe. That's absolutely fine. Do what you want. No one's a prisoner here. But actually 3 different people have over the weeks messaged me to say why they've unsubscribed. And actually that's quite useful, thank you. Although this was a bit odd because all of them said in so many words, you're supposed to be a frugal channel, but you're not doing any frugal videos. So let me address that straight away, especially if anyone was a fairly recent subscriber and that's what they were thinking too. So first of all, I've never ever said I'm a frugal channel. My whole channel, excuse me, it's going to be a slurp day. Yeah, my whole channel is, in a nutshell, having to leave a job that I loved because my body failed me. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I have no wage, I have no, government assistance in the form of benefits, I have no financial support from a partner or family. I'm on my own, what am I going to do next? So that's how it started. It was just, can I live by my own means? Can I live by my own hands? So that's what my channel is. A byproduct of that is that I am very frugal, and I've always been frugal because, quite often it's through environmental concerns, but I've always been frugal. Now I'm more frugal than ever because I manage on so little. I actually manage on nearly half, it's a bit more than half, of the UK state pension, for example. So when the pensioners are saying, oh, it's so hard, it's like, yeah, I understand, I get it, because I'm on even less. It's not a pity party, it's just how it is. So I just wanted to make that clear that I never intended to be a frugal channel. That seems to have been something in the last sort of 3 or 4 years that's taken off. When I started 7.5 years ago, it was just, can I survive by my own wits? And as for I don't make frugal videos anymore, well, actually, every video is a frugal video in a way, because just by the fact that the videos are about my life and my life is frugal, so everything I do, everything I'm sharing in my videos is, I'm doing things on very, very little money or on no money. So all this stuff, I know there've been a couple of exceptions recently with the building work, the computer, all of those big expenses, but they've been saved for. But generally, everything you've seen in the last few weeks in terms of doing things to the flat, doing the bathroom window reno myself cost me about 15 quid rather than buying frosted glass for 250 quid or something. It's a massive saving. That's a frugal video. Yeah, so anyway, I hope that makes things clear for anyone who thinks I'm supposed to be one thing, but actually that was never my intention. I just happen to be frugal. But I am going to talk about some frugal stuff today. I'm just going to touch back on some basics because, well, like I said, I set myself a budget every year. I sit down at the beginning of the year. I did a budget video at the beginning of this year, I'm pretty sure. I'll tag it on at the end of this. But I sit down with all my paperwork, all my outgoings, incomings, all of that stuff, so that I can plan for the year in terms of what money do I need on a monthly basis, but also what money do I need for annual bills. So for annual bills, if I've got a bill, I'm going to use handy figures. If I've got a bill for £120 each year, like my boiler service, I know that if I try and find £120 in October, whenever I have it serviced, I'm not going to have 120 quid to hand. So what I do is I put away £10 every month, because £10 a month, it just doesn't seem quite so much. So that I save. So I put, for all my annual bills, I always set that money aside every month. So for some things it might be I'm putting aside £6, some things I might be putting aside £25, whatever it is. Every month things get set aside. So when I get the annual bills, and they're quite big, the money's there for them. And I think, you know, fundamentally the most important part of budgeting when you're on a really, really tight budget is you've got to be ruthless and honest. Make a note, however you want to do it, whether you want to do it on a spreadsheet, on the computer, or on paper. I like working on paper. Is write down every single expense that's going out. And then make a note of what your income is. The income bit's a bit tricky if you're self-employed, because kind of that's what it is. But you're going to have a good guesstimate based on previous years. And hopefully the income is bigger than the outcome, the outgoings, you know what I mean. If it's not, that's where you're getting your problems. So if your outgoings are larger than your income, you have to get rid of something, you have to trim the fat. So for me, it's always been about, and that's kind of today as well, it's about that thing of, I don't want to live in debt, I want to live within my means, I don't want to get into debt. Some of you may have considerably more of an income than me, but you have debt and you want to clear it. And just to say very quickly, I'm not a debt advisor. If you are struggling to put food on the table each month because of debt, please do get advice. I'm sure it's pretty much the same all over the world, but in the UK, if you go online and just key in free, you want to get it for free debt advice, there should be all sorts of help available for you. Anyway, one of the reasons I'm revisiting the subject today, excuse me, is I've mentioned probably too often, I've probably bored people, but I've mentioned that my income has been dropping. I don't know what's wrong with YouTube. They're being not very nice, not very kind, and it's really, really, it's a little bit scary actually. However, and I think this is the point about debt, I could just ignore it and pretend nothing's happening and just carry on as I have been, but that's not going to solve any issues. So I'm kind of tackling it head on today, and that's what I would suggest for any of you who are, you know that in the back of your mind you're a bit worried about things, and maybe it's not even it looks sort of scary debt, putting food on the table, but maybe it's that you set yourself the challenge this year of spending less, saving more. Maybe there's a big ticket item that you're saving for, but maybe over the months in January and February you were all geared up for it. Yeah, I'm not going to spend anything, I'm going to have a no spend month, and you did really well. But just like food, eating, diets, things sneak in, things slip, so that you've got to this point in the year and suddenly you're saying to yourself, hang on a minute, I'm getting to the end of the month and there's nothing left in the bank account. I'm back to square one, it feels like. So yeah, don't ignore things. Have a little review. Have a sit down with yourself and have a review. So if it was a no spend year, what are the things that have started to sneak back in to your purchasing each week or each month? I'm doing it today because I have a couple of annual bills that come at this time, which I account for in January, and I usually add about anywhere between 5 and 10% each year to account for inflation. But I've had 2 bills which have gone through the roof, way more. They've way more. One of them was up by 25%. My heart sank when I opened my invoice, and I just thought, this is getting ridiculous. It's getting crazy. It's getting out of control. And like I said, I had a little moment of really quite upset, but also like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This can't go on, and all that. I don't mean like, I can't go on. I don't mean it in a dramatic way, just a kind of realistic, being a responsible adult way. So I had a sit down with myself, took a long, hard look at everything, and had to make a couple of really difficult decisions. For example, when I first left work 7.5 years ago, I mean, I just had so little coming in. I had to cancel all of my charity standing orders. So I used to tithe 10% of my income to charities. I had to stop doing that. Basically, my tithing to charities was more than I had coming in, even for me. But gradually, as I built the channel, as I built the shop and all that kind of stuff, I was able to reintroduce all my charities, which made me really happy. But I've now had to, for now, cancel all my standing orders to charities again. I have to feed myself first. I'm sorry, but I feel bad about it. I feel guilty. But on the other hand, hang on a minute, I don't have money for my shopping. So, and hopefully, things will change and things will pick up, and so I can start doing my charities again. But there were a couple of other things to do with business. I've had to just cancel them completely. Later in the year, as I mentioned when I was talking about my new PC, I'll be cancelling Microsoft Office. I'll be cancelling that subscription. I'll be cancelling all my Norton subscriptions. I'm just cancelling everything that I possibly can. Obviously, I mean, I even thought the other day about having the gas disconnected. It's like, no, Vivi, that's going too far. You need it for cooking, washing, what have you. So, yeah, don't be afraid to make some hard decisions and be really brutal so that you can live within your means. Or if you still have a decent enough income, but you're finding that there's no money at the end of the month, just have a think again about your shopping habits and where that money is going. I think the most important thing is that with all our financial habits, is that we don't ignore things and we don't just hope it'll get better somehow magically on its own. You need to take control. You need to be in charge of your finances. So, a review and some, having to make some tough decisions, but good. It's like, I don't like having to ditch the charities, but on the other hand, and now kind of the little sort of bundle I've made for myself, it's like, okay, even with this massive drop in income, I can still manage all my basics. Yay! And just to say very quickly, because I know there are trolls out there all the time, those who might say, oh, just get a job. Firstly, I have 3 jobs that just don't pay very well. Secondly, since just around Christmas time, I look every week on the job centre board here, and there's nothing that I'm either qualified to do or that I'm fit to do. So it's not as simple as saying, no, just get a job. Anyway, let's park that as neggy. So coming back to my kind of the crux of my tips, I've got a 10. I thought I'd do 10, my top 10 tips. Let's try and rattle through them so I don't, this isn't too much of a long one today. So my most important tip, at least for me, I want to pass it on, is I only ever buy what I really need. You've heard all this before, but let's just remind ourselves. So I only ever buy what I really need, and really need covers shelter, warmth, food, water, and some clothing. That's all I really need. Everything else is extra. And so if there's extra money, yeah, buy extra things. But yeah, my focus is always on making sure I can cover what I really need. Food, warmth, shelter, clothing, water. Good, tick. Second point, if I need something, or if you need something, let's say I need a waste paper basket. I don't know why, I just saw my waste fabrics basket just there by the door. If I need a waste fabrics basket, rather than going and buying one, have I got something else at home already that I can use? So if you're thinking about buying something for a specific job, before you buy it, have a little think, have a rummage around your home. Have you already got something which will do that job just as well? So always think before you buy. If you need something and you're on the point of purchasing it, have a quick think. Is this something that I could borrow? So this is particularly true, isn't it, for times like I've been having of DIY, tarting the flat up and what have you. So if you remember when I did the kitchen floor and the butcher block, I wanted a power sander, definitely for the floor. I don't have a power sander. I don't know how much they cost to buy because I didn't buy one, I borrowed. So either borrowing from a friend or borrowing from a library of things. I don't know what it's called in your neck of the woods, but I've got one nearish me. It would be a bus ride away, but it's called the Library of Things, and it's stuff like power tools, but they do all sorts. They do things like all sorts of cake making stuff. So for example, you can borrow a big food mixer. You can borrow cake pans, tins for the oven. So for example, let's say you've got a big birthday or a big do coming up and you want to bake some cakes for it, but you don't have the kit. You can borrow the kit, do all your cooking, return the kit at a fraction of the cost of buying it. Of course, if it's the cake stuff and you're going to be making cakes every single weekend, then it's going to be cheaper ultimately to buy it yourself. But yeah, always think, can I borrow this bit of kit from someone or somewhere? My absolute golden rule though with borrowing, whether it's from a library of things or from your best friend, is I've always tried to return whatever I've borrowed, even cleaner than it was when I borrowed it. And you know, if it depends how good the friend is. I think with friendship, you don't necessarily need to buy them something to say thank you, because it's a quid pro quo all the time, isn't it? But you might think, well, I want to give them something as a thank you. Can you make something as a thank you? Perhaps you can make a cake, or perhaps you can make a nice dinner. You could maybe replicate a takeaway dinner to say, here's your item back, it's clean. You don't say it to your friend, it's cleaner than when you gave it to me, but here's your item back, immaculate, and here's a takeaway for you to say thank you. If you're that minded that you want to give them something as a thank you, can I make something myself first? So yeah, borrow it. And then if you can't improvise with something you've already got in the house, and it's not something that you can borrow, so that you are therefore going to be buying it, can you buy it secondhand? Can you look for secondhand first? And I know tons of you know all this. So charity shops, thrift stores, junk shops, flea markets, car boot sales, online, there are so many different marketplaces. I'm not going to name any of them, give them free promotion. No, there are so many places, areas where we can go and source stuff secondhand. So we're back to that, my sewing scraps bin. I'm sure I could go online and within seconds find somewhere a nice, it's a basket, I use that. I could find a nice basket secondhand rather than buying something new, and hopefully secondhand means it's going to be cheaper. And lastly, on that subject of when you're about to buy something, think about, is it something that you can make yourself? So we're talking about, we've already said, do you really, really, really need to make this purchase? And if you do, is it something you can scavenge from your own house already, that basket? Is it something you can borrow from a friend? Is it something you can buy secondhand? Is it something you can make yourself? I always think, you know, some learning how to use a sewing machine, getting some basic sewing machine skills is so useful. And you know, things like cushions, bed throws, curtains, they're all fairly straightforward things to make because they're all straight sides. None of it's about, you know, to show you, none of it's about fitting a garment, setting in a zip. With cushions, you can do a button closure. You don't even have to set a zip in. You don't have to do piping around your cushion. It can be really simple. So for all those home furnishing things, what about trying to make it yourself? Maybe you've got sewing machine skills, but you don't have a sewing machine. We go back to point number 3. Can you borrow a sewing machine? So my library of things they have sewing machines, they have overlockers, they have all this, it's just the humidity just went up, I could feel it. They have all sorts of, I'm just going to use my mouse mat as a fan. My mouse mat, yes, it's a football. Yeah, if you're making it yourself but you don't have the equipment, the sewing machine, can you borrow a sewing machine? Again, if you're borrowing it from a friend, please give it back in perfect condition. If you snap a needle when you've borrowed from a friend, please buy a new needle, replace that needle. Yeah, I think that there's so much satisfaction. I think, look, sorry, I was about to go on a completely different train of thought then. There's no two ways about it. Living on so little money at times is horrible. It's hard. There's no, you know, I'm not going to make any bones about it. You know, no holidays, none of that. Ugh. Sometimes it's horrible and hard. But the number of times, you know, when I've done something myself because I can't afford to get a tradesperson in to do it, wow, the satisfaction. So not only have I saved a ton of money by doing something myself, but the satisfaction I get from once I've finished something, standing back and thinking, wow, I did that myself. And with that comes a surge in confidence, and that's such a happy feeling. So yeah, give things a go yourself. Okay, now we're getting into some, you know, kind of pretty obvious stuff, but so I'm looking at, I scribbled out my notes last night. Meal planning. I think food and everything we're eating, I think that's one area where I think a lot of us can probably save a little bit. Some people save a chunk every single week in, week out, week in, week out. So over the course of a year, you know, it could even be hundreds of pounds that you're saving. So with that, I always say, one of the best things you can do for yourself is meal planning. Not just in terms of, oh, I'm going to have this, that night, but in terms of, if I cook this recipe on Monday, can I use the leftovers but change them on Tuesday? So for example, and I know it's something Richard and Paul do as well, if I make a spag bol on Monday, on Tuesday, with the addition of some spices and some kidney beans, can I turn it into a chilli? So yes, we're meal planning. The whole idea of meal planning is to then, with your shopping list, only buy what you actually need. We're coming back to that word again, need. But as part of your meal plan, I think in terms of cooking enough for leftovers, and you can either put the leftovers in the freezer and have that same meal a few days later or the following week. Exactly as I showed you how I think it was back in April, I showed you a week of my eating, although it was knocked slightly out of whack by the fact that I ended up feeling really quite poorly in the middle of that week. But yeah, so plan it in terms of whenever you cook more than you need, so that either you get a freezer meal, or the next day have exactly the same meal, or a few additions to change it into a completely different meal. But yeah, make a meal plan for the week, and from the meal plan you can then make your shopping list, excuse me, and then you are only going to be buying what you absolutely need for that week of meals. You might get to the stage where you want to do a meal plan for a whole month, because then with some of the ingredients you can buy them in bulk, or you might buy one ingredient for 1 week and it's a bulk ingredient anyway, so that in 2 or 3 weeks time, when you want that same meal or a similar meal, when you already have that ingredient because you bought it in bulk. Fab. The other thing with that is cook from scratch. If you literally cook everything from scratch, you'll save yourself a small fortune. That might be quite daunting, so maybe what you can do as a little challenge for yourself is to say, right, okay, between now and Christmas, August, September, October, November, December, 5 months, about 20 weeks, it's less than that, I don't know, but over the next few weeks, once a week, or just do it for the next, let's say 14, 2 meals a day, 14, over the next 14 weeks, learn one new recipe each week that's a frugal recipe, or not even necessarily super frugal, but if you're cooking it from scratch yourself, you're going to save from buying it either ready-made or as a takeaway, that sort of thing. But if you can learn a repertoire of at least 14 recipes that you can make yourself fairly cheaply, fairly quickly, fairly easily, then suddenly meal planning, you can think, oh, I'm going to do that. Learning those frugal recipes means you'll know you've got something to fall back on. So if you've got a particularly tight week in terms of the old pennies, you can think, right, this is a super frugal week. Let's go and have a look at Vivi's recipes because they're super frugal. Meal planning, learn recipes. When you do go shopping with that very strict shopping list, so that you're not tempted, especially those middle aisles I always hear about the middle aisle. I don't even look in them. Just don't go there because you don't need anything from those aisles. You need food, water, shelter, warmth, clothing. You don't need anything else. Well, you might, but revert back to the beginning of this video. Can I borrow? Can I swap? Can I get it secondhand? You know what I'm saying? But with that really strict shopping list, you can be a little bit flexible in it. Talked about this before as well. So that if one of your recipes you're cooking calls for kale, for example, and you get to your shop and you notice that Savoy cabbage is on sale and it's half the price of the kale, swap the kale and have the Savoy cabbage instead. When it's a sort of like for like swap, just swap it out. If there's something on offer which will work in your recipe, swap. But otherwise, stick to your shopping list, which sticks to your meal plan. We're nearly there. I'm trying to rattle and not be too long today. Save for emergencies, my goodness, all your big ticket items, borrowing, going into debt to buy things, you end up paying more because of interest on debt and all that kind of thing. So if there's a big ticket item that you really want, you don't need it right now, but you do want it. Like me with a vacuum cleaner. I will be buying a new vacuum cleaner at some point, but I'll save. I can start doing I've got my savings funds anyway. But I think, yeah, no matter how small your budget, mine is tiny, but I'm still, at the moment, I'm literally only putting £5 away each month at the moment. That's all I can afford, but it's better than nothing. And after a year, that's going to be £60. Hopefully before the year is out, I can increase my savings, but yeah, please. And if you are a regular earner, if you're earning, like normal wages, definitely think about, starting savings accounts. I've talked enough about that in the past. There's another video I think I've done about the importance of savings. Maybe I'll try and find that to put it on the end of this one. Yeah, I think this is a good one, and this relates back to that, the middle aisles. Recognise your weaknesses. Your weakness or weaknesses. What are those items that you always fall for and purchase? You don't need any more of them, but somehow you just love them and you love buying them. So for some, I've got a friend who just like scatter cushions and throws for the sofa. They change in her house like every 6 months. I'm like, are you mad? How much have you spent over the years on your blimmin' scatter cushions? You don't need to keep... Anyway, she's a sucker for things like that. Me, I'm a sucker for stationery. Oh, I love stationery, paper, whether it's notebooks or, you know, beautiful envelopes, fountain pens, pencils, erasers. I love it all. I love stationery. Now I know that that's my weakness, and I also know that I do not need any more notepaper, notebooks, diaries, anything like that in my life. I know I don't need them because I've got more than enough for probably 2 or 3 years. In fact, I'm trying to use them up. Because I know that that's my weakness, I don't go anywhere near that kind of stuff. Paper Chase, I don't know if it's still there, their flagship shop on Tottenham Court Road. On the first floor, they have their sort of art paper section, so all these beautiful handmade papers and just stunning. Also on that first floor is towards the back is their section of drawing pens, fountain pens, inks, all of that sort of stuff. So I used to go there because I like using sepia ink. Just can't get it anywhere else. You can get black ink, blue ink, anywhere. But I used to have to go up to Tottenham Court Road for my sepia ink for my fountain pen. I don't know how much, I haven't bought any for ages. Let's say it's 10 quid a jar. Inevitably I'd come out of there having spent 100 quid. Rolls and rolls of handmade paper. What am I going to do with it? I haven't got any projects in mind for it, but it was just so lovely and so tempting, and I just had to buy it and have it. No more. So yeah, recognise what your weakness is and perhaps avoid that kind of shop completely, if you can. You know, for some people it's shoes, handbags, whatever it is. If you've got a weakness for shoes, look, if you've got more, I would say if you've got more than, say, 8 pairs of shoes in your home, you've got a weakness. You don't need more than 8 pairs, you know, work pair, formal pair, summer pair, winter pair, garden pair, running shoes, wellies, sandals. There you go, 8 pairs. Yeah, avoid those shops. So this is, I've talked about this before as well. Once you've done that whole budget thing at the beginning of the year, especially if you're trying to bring down debt and you're being really strict with yourself, one of the things I do, I've done it for so long, and I think it's one of the things that really helps, especially in terms of those impulse purchases, those treats, those, it's only a 80p bar of chocolate, that's not going to hurt, is it? I know what my budget is per week for living on, outside of, once all the bills and stuff are taken care of, I know that I can give myself £35 a week to live on. And that's for food, plus absolutely everything else. Generally speaking, I get that money out, each week I get my 35 quid out in cash. So I go into the bank, I use my bank in person. Let's keep using these things, otherwise they're all going to close. I know people say, isn't it terrible, the high streets are all closing, but then you do all your shopping online. What do you expect? Anyway, so I go into my bank in person, withdraw 35 quid, and that is my money for everything for the week. So if I know I'm going to be making a bus trip somewhere and there's nothing on my travel card, I might have to top it up with a £5. So I go, okay, that's that £5. My food shopping is going to be £15, maybe £18. So, okay, I know that. So it might be that by Tuesday I might have 17 quid in my purse, but actually I haven't done my food shop yet. That other money might have gone on the cost of postage for stuff. I might have had an expensive travel time, whatever it is. Now, if I've got that 17 quid in my purse and I see, and this happened the other week, I saw a book in the shop window, it was brand new, and it intrigued me. It was paperback, it was £10.99, it really intrigued me, I really fancied it. But I look in my wallet and there's £17 in there. If I spend 11 quid on that book, that's going to leave me with 6 quid for my food shopping. And that makes it a no-brainer. If I look at my purse and think I've got 6 quid for all my food for a week, I can't do that. Now that I don't have a garden, there's no way I can do food shopping for 6 quid for the week. So you can either have that, you can have that book, Vivi, go on if you want it, have it. But you ain't going to eat this week. It's like, that would be miserable. So by having the cash, I know people do the envelope system and all that. I literally just have £35 in my purse. It has to last the whole week, whatever happens. I mean, obviously if there's an emergency like the roof, that's savings. But just in terms of spending, it doesn't matter how tempting something is, how much I fancy it. If I ain't got the money in my purse, I ain't having it. Simple as that. That might be too hardcore for some people, but the way I would think of it is, if you see something, if you've got something in your hand, well, you all know my motto, do I really need it? Ask yourself. If you've picked something up in that middle aisle, a jewellery box made to look like a birdhouse, do I really need it? Well, the answer is no, you don't really need it, put it back. But if you're still really struggling and trying to think, just think to yourself, okay, this jewellery box that looks like a birdhouse, why? It costs £10. Just kind of think to yourself, well, what would £10 buy me in my food shop this week? Or what would £10, how good would it feel to put £10 in my savings account this week? That would feel really good. Or how good would it feel to pay £10 down with my debt? Because every £10 helps. Just think about, if I spend it there, I can't spend that money somewhere else. Is there somewhere else I'd rather spend the money? But more than anything, do I really need it? You don't need a birdhouse-shaped jewellery box. Stop it. And then I think finally, the thing about treats, and this goes back to this people were saying about, I haven't been doing frugal videos. Well, actually all those quiet videos I did at the end of June when I was having my sort of bit of social media break, they were kind of my treats in a way for me that I shared. And just having quiet time, actually there was loads of footage I didn't include in the end, but there were things like I took my book to the park one afternoon, just spent an hour lying in the grass reading. Oh, that's a treat. Kitty cuddles, meeting up with friends in the park just for a natter and just enjoying some fine weather. Those occasions when we did have the fine weather in June. Having a lovely quiet game of cards in the afternoon, whether it's a 5-minute game or a 15-minute game, all of that stuff was little treats, little bits of entertainment for myself that cost nothing. So yeah, when you think, I really, really need a treat, perhaps, yeah, have a treat, but that doesn't cost anything. And perhaps what you're really craving is, maybe it's a bit of company. So call a couple of friends and say, hey, why don't we have a little picnic? Why don't we meet up for a picnic next weekend? And you can make all your own food, obviously at a fraction of the cost of either buying it from a shop or going to a restaurant for your meet-up. And then if the weather's inclement, say, well, let's all come back to my flat and we'll have our picnic indoors. But the main thing is, it's that the treat is the company of your best friends, just having a natter and a catch-up, enjoying each other's company. Fab. Yeah, it always comes back to the same thing though. I'm going to wrap up now because I've been yapping for ages. It always comes back to the very same thing though, every time. And that is, if you just keep saying to yourself, do I really need it? Hopefully you won't make purchases which are just tat, which in another 2 or 3 years' time, you're going, oh, I need to have another clear out, and then all that tat ends up going to a charity shop. Don't bring it in the first place, and save yourself a bit of money. Right, so that's me and my my budgeting for myself. That's kind of got me back on track again after that mild kind of panic moment. It wasn't so much a panic moment, it was just more of a sort of a feeling angry moment, that it's just everything keeps going up in price. And honestly, when things are going up way beyond inflation, it just makes me mad. But having that quiet, calm, okay, what is the absolute truth of the situation? This isn't going to work. I have to do something. I've done something. Now it can work again. I'm back on track. Yay. I'm not going to get into debt. And hopefully at some point things will start getting better, so that I can start putting a little bit more into savings. But boy, oh boy, have I been grateful for my savings this summer so many times. All right, lovelies, I'll see you all again really soon, I hope. I'm not sure what for next. It might be another chatty one. Yeah, not sure, we'll see. I'll see you then. It's getting a bit dark. Can you feel? I'm looking at the viewing screen. It's getting kind of dark. It's because it's properly raining now. Never mind. Good for the gardens. The gardeners have been really wanting a bit of rain, haven't they? All right, lovelies, until the next one. Cheerio.